What is up, hackers, slackers, and compilation trackers? Thanks for sitting down at the messy desk with me this week. Today, I want to talk to you about something really special that I was lucky enough to be a part of. I have name dropped EasyBot and his Discord multiple times on this channel. If you don't know who EasyBot is, he runs a really helpful Electron channel similar to mine in that it's about Electron, and that's about where the similarities end. His tutorials are short, to the point, and very helpful, so the polar opposite of mine. But anyway, some of the people in that Discord had the bright idea to do a compilation tape, and donate the proceeds to charity. And so I want to give credit where credit's due. I believe the original idea was thought of by our good friend Jesse. In fact, Jesse started a label recently called Hollow Home Records, which will ideally continue to release projects like this of independent creators where the proceeds will all go to charity. So it's a really, really awesome cause, something that I think everyone can agree is a really cool thing, especially in such a dark, dark time. So we all got together and made some ambient tracks. And I have to tell you that don't fixate on me being in this, because you might look at me and think,
oh God, he's doing it, so it's gotta be garbage, right?
You're wrong. I don't know how they let me in there, but we have some insanely, insanely talented people on this thing. If you want to listen very closely, you can hear the sound of names dropping. We got Red Means Recording. We got the Ambient God, R. Benny. We got Matt Lowry over here. Matt Lowry. I don't know how to say your last name, dude. I'm sorry, but you make really, really pretty videos. My wife's looking at me funny, so you know this bit is great. Anyway, it's an incredibly, incredibly powerful tape, front to back, just massive Sigma male Giga Chad energy dripping all over this thing. And the best part is all the proceeds go to the ACLU. So some people are going to be mad about that. I hope they stay mad, because that's great. So my process in making this track actually took kind of an interesting trajectory. And so I wanted to show you the track, and kind of show you how it came to be what it is, and promote the tape, because that's the biggest goal. I want people to buy this tape, listen to this tape, spread the word about this and Hollow Home Records, because it's an awesome thing, and I'm just so insanely humbled to be a part of it. So without further ado, how did I make this ambient track? How did it come to fruition? Is it allergies or is it COVID? We're gonna answer 2 out of 3 of those things today, so stick around to find out which. Let's talk about it. Okay, so I slacked off a lot on getting started on this project. I really spent a lot of time waffling about where to start and what I wanted the track to be, and I wanted it to have kind of an emotional weight, because we're in such an emotionally charged time. And nothing was coming out right. I wasn't having much luck, and eventually I thought maybe I wouldn't even submit anything for the compilation. But true to form, everybody in the Discord was incredibly, incredibly nice and passionate, and pushed me to really try to get a track out. And so what I did was I dug my dirty hands into the dusty, grimy bin of throwaway projects that I had. And when I did, I found this really old sample I have here. Now this is a guitar sample that I played into the Qubit Nebulae, which is a modular granulizer time stretcher thing. I don't have that module or any modular anymore, but it was the one thing I got out of it that I felt really proud about. So I took a listen to this, and I'll go ahead and solo it for you here, and you can take a listen briefly. It has this really quiet, kind of mournful thing. I don't know. It really spoke to me, and I never really did anything meaningful with it. So I thought, why not? Let's build a track around this dang thing. And so the first thing that I was tasked with was figuring out how long I wanted this track to be. I think it's kind of a cliche to have long ambient tracks, and Jesse agreed with me on that, so we all decided to set about a 4-minute maximum. I wanted to go even shorter, so I just took a snippet of this. It's like 9 minutes long. I just took a random snippet and hoped that it was the best snippet. I wasn't going to fixate too hard. And in classic me fashion, the first thing that I did was resample it, and in resampling it, I think I pitched it up an octave, right? Let's double check here. Yeah, so I pitched it up an octave, And so when you put those two layers together, they sound like this. And so this is sort of imitating a kind of like a shimmer reverb, kind of a grain delay. I've talked about in the past that I'm not a huge fan of those effects, mostly because they exactly mimic what you're doing. By definition, they're repeating a sound back to you, right? It's a delay or it's a reverb. And I don't love that as much. I love this because it's slightly out of phase. It's going to be at least slightly different all the way through. And so it keeps the ear more interested. It hooks you longer, and it feels less kind of rote and repetitive. And I don't know, just kind of annoying. I get easily annoyed by shimmer reverbs and grain delay effects like that. So the next thing I did was I went over to my Novation Summit and I said, okay, I'm going to put as many layers into this thing as I possibly can before it gets just too grating. Let me turn off my automation here because I don't have much that's that meaningful. And so you can see I did quite a bit. And rather than go through each of these, I will just play you the whole group with the main bit itself. And you can kind of hear in various areas. It's just texture, man. It's just really subtle texture. And then here I made a big old bass, which sounds like this. Yeah, it's a bass. We love it. I made that on the Summit as well. It's meant to be kind of a relaxed crescendo. Here's what I mean. In my mind, it just kind of lowers you down into this warmth and this sort of feeling of being enveloped, which I think ambient music is particularly good at, kind of creating a mood of being enveloped. So the next thing I did was I took a bunch of Summit stuff and I ran it through the ER301, which is a module. I'll put it up on the screen here. I'll do the same thing with the Nebulae, I guess. Again, I don't own any modular anymore, but at the time I did. And so I used the heck out of it. And so I just made a bunch of granular chops and just kind of tweaked it for the entirety of the track. And it's just sort of subtle background noise and it's really quiet. Let me turn it up. You can hear it has this kind of rhythmic chopping to it. And I mean, that's it. It's just in the background, just doing background stuff, you know? It's nothing crazy, but with everything else, it sounds like this. So you might not even be able to hear it, but the point in ambient music is not necessarily being able to clearly hear each element, but rather building a wall of sound, building an environment to place your listener in. And so that was kind of my goal by just adding this sort of bed of texture. One thing that I struggle with in ambient music is filling space enough so that it doesn't feel like things are constantly starting and stopping. Like you want to have different layers, you want to have things come in and out, but you don't want to feel like things are dropping out unless that's a specific aesthetic you're going for. And so having an under layer like this, I found is incredibly useful to kind of conveying that without literally having something constantly going. If you just hold your track back from silence with these tiny layers, you'll find that your ambience feels a lot more smooth. And so that's something that worked really well for me there. Moving right along, we have some piano stuff that I did. And this is just using Una Corda. I've frozen flattened it because it's a hell of a CPU hog. But I used Native Instruments Una Corda to play some felt piano. And it sounds like this. And here. And what I'm doing there is running it through Output's plugin Portal, which I found to be very inspiring as a kind of reminds me of the Eurorack module Clouds. It's sort of a real-time granular processor, and it's quite good at that. And in context with that, or rather in concert with that, I did some more piano stuff. I resampled it and I bandpassed it. Very quiet there. and you can hear that it's reversed. And again, this is all just building texture. And if you're asking yourself, this all seems so random where you're putting them and what was your thinking there? The answer is that most of the time I kind of just start placing it random, and then I start listening for pockets or implied rhythms or implied transitions or implied lead ups to things. Listen to how this reverse leads into that next kind of guitar stab or click, however you want to describe that, in a way that was quite pleasant. So it's really just a trial and error. You're just moving things around, hoping for the best. Sometimes it really doesn't work out at all, and it's a big time bummer, but we do our best. Next down the line, I have, again, another resample here. It sounds like this. And so all this is the exact same thing from the piano dry, except it's going into a Valhalla vintage reverb with big old decay here. I should mention some of the processing on these other things. I got a little bit of saturator here. I think this is some more reverb there. As mentioned, this is dry. The 301 is doing some auto pan. There's just a tiny bit of downsampling. And again, that's for that sort of subtle texture, right? We're just adding subtle texture. What's going on with the Summit? Just some EQ on the Summit. I didn't want to do anything too crazy. Okay, so now that I've gotten the way out of explaining a little bit of the processing there, we can keep on moving. So all this stuff here, labeled EasyBot, is stuff that Wes did. Now, Wes and I have been friends for a while, and we started making ambient music together early last summer. And now he and I and another artist who I'm really excited about named Hiss Quiet, Ash is a good friend of ours. I'll link their stuff down there. Have joined forces to make music under the name Heaven for Flightless Birds, because if you're going to make ambient music, you may as well be extremely pretentious and self-important about it. That's the way we went. Expect stuff from us, because this is our first formal track together. This was without Ash, but we just are working on getting our first track mastered, and that's going to be out soon. So keep an eye out for that. Hopefully by the time this video is out, it will be out, and I'll link it down in the description. And I'd love to hear what you think of that, because it's stuff that I'm really proud of. So these bits by West, I don't have a ton of insight into what his thinking was, but I am going to go over them because I think he did a great job kind of fleshing out the track and filling some empty space. So let's listen to what he did. This I know was using the Labs, which is a oh my god, I'm blanking on the name. It's a free string library made by a certain manufacturer, Spitfire. That's what it is. They make great stuff. And so this is a free plugin that you can use that emulates strings and stuff. It's sample libraries, and it sounds like this. And so again, this is just texture here, right? This is just little bits at a time. And it just fills these little tiny crevices and small, almost indiscernible spaces between the main texture, which is always going to be this long guitar sample up here, in a way that kind of disguises any other pauses or the bringing in and out of layers. You can see there's layers coming in and out here. This choppy bit and this choppy bit here being here kind of disguise the fading in and out of some of these other things. It's a really useful technique, and West is doing what I do, which is smart, because everything I do is super smart, right? I'm infallible and never wrong, and that's why you watch this content. So let's move right along to the choir. This is really interesting. This instrument is really interesting to me. It starts as like a stringy thing, but it has this sort of, it must be LFO'd or something. You get these choir bits. And in context with everything else, you can hear it really clearly there, that I love that. I need to download whatever the plugin is that he used for this. I'm pretty sure it's still Streamlabs, or not Streamlabs, what the fuck. I'm pretty sure it's still the Spitfire plugin I mentioned earlier, because he uses that quite a bit. But it's really, really useful. And I think probably the best layer in the entire track. It really brings together the mood that was being created. So really, really, really good choice by him for that layer. So I went ahead and panned it hard right a little bit of EQ there. It's going to be EQ on every track, right? Where this is a mixed track. So we want to make sure that we clean up any unnecessary lows and unnecessary highs in some areas. So yeah, the next thing he did was this little rattly bit. So let's listen. Kind of creepy, huh? I think this panned with the string here sounds quite interesting, so let's listen. It almost sounds like one instrument together, just panned in the stereo field in a really pleasing way. And the next thing he did was this kind of noisy string layer. A lot of bow noise on that. Again, just a little EQ. I lifted up the highs just slightly so that you could get a little bit more of that hissing from the bow noise. And then we have this trumpety sample here. Now, why West labeled it trumpety, I have no idea. That sounds like strings to me, my boy. But nevertheless, he made this track much better than I would have been able to do on my own. And so we thank him for that. Thank you, West, for being the best. It's a rhyme, so it must be true. I love West. How about you? And so we kind of sat on the track for a little bit, and I felt like there was something missing. It wasn't quite there. So I sent it along to another friend of mine, a musician who I trust really implicitly to give me accurate and unrestrained feedback. And that's my friend Akil. He makes just insane modular music and is a really smart, classically trained dude. And so I'll put his links down there and you can check him out. Unfortunately, he is not on the compilation because Akil hates charity. I came to him and I said, hey, dude, you want to be a part of this compilation? He said, oh, yeah, but I mean, how much am I going to get paid? And I said, well, okay, the money's actually going to go to the ACLU. It's a great cause. And he spat in my face. And I'm like, dude, okay, it's COVID season. You can't just go spitting in people's faces. And he said, I'll spit in your face anytime you mention charity to me. I hate charity and I hate helping people. Go away from me. Of course, I'm kidding. Akil, I don't really know why he didn't end up on the compilation. I think he was just too busy being a big shot with a gigantic modular to help the little man. So hit his DMs and be really mean to him about that. What he did was he provided me with some feedback and he offered to take the full mix of our track and run it through his Big Sky reverb pedal at full wet to just get, again, more of this texture and underlying like a bed of sound, right? And he sent them over to me, and he sent me a couple with different decay times and with different settings. And so I took them both and I band passed them in slightly different ways, panned them hard left and hard right. And it sounds like this. It'll be unsurprising because it just sounds like, you know, the track. They're very quiet because I don't want it to take up too much room in the mix. And so again, when I turn them, like, let's listen to it with it. And now I'm going to turn it off. Do you hear that? I don't know about you, but it really takes out the textural, for lack of a better word, ambient element that I think provides a lot of atmosphere for the track. And so when you take that away, I feel like it's missing something. It just, anytime I took it out, it just felt like there was a gap there. And so I really can't thank him enough for providing kind of the missing puzzle piece to figuring out what I needed to finish this track, and also provide me with a great tip on ambient music, which is taking full reverb mixes, cleaning them up kind of intensely with band passes or just aggressive EQing. I'm not sure that this is a scientific thing I did. I just did it to taste. And using them as kind of beds for texture. I've been doing that constantly now in projects I'm working on, so I can't think of enough. Another thing I did on the second layer here is I processed it through Output's portal here. I used this space drag preset, nothing super fancy. Lots of controls and wiggly bits here. I don't want to go super deep into all the deep settings, but it just adds an additional layer of elements and keeps things interesting and meaningfully different from this other reverb layer here. And I ran it through RC Color for a little bit of crunch and noise, just to, again, distinguish it from this other one a little bit. So to solo this one by itself, it sounds like this. Yeah, and so it was a really nice extra layer to have under the track. I also have a slightly different one that fades in here as the track starts. I'm just going to play it with the track. You should be able to hear it come in. It's just this kind of high, shimmery shimmery texture. You'll find a consistent thing in my ambient music, which is that I imitate effects a lot. I imitate shimmer reverb. I imitate grain delay rather than just using shimmer verbs and grain delays. And I explained earlier, it's just, for me, it adds something a little more unique and a little more unpredictable than something that is just verbatim repeating what you're putting into it. As you can see here, this is quite embarrassing. I had some bird samples, some Tweedly birds, that were on an SD card, and I never actually put them on the hard drive of my computer, so those are not here. But trust me, they sound like birds. And it was actually a sample I recorded right outside my house at like 6:30 in the morning. These birds were just going buck wild, and so I used a little Zoom recorder to record them. I did some processing on them, but it was mostly just EQ and I think a little bit of reverb. Yeah, that was kind of the last little bit of the track. I'm really proud of it. It started with a sketch that I was never going to do anything with, and ended up being a track that is going to be on a compilation that I'm insanely humbled to have been a part of, that's going to hopefully help some people. I really hope that we can get the word out and get people to talk about this thing and buy it. Because if you don't like my track, you really should check out some of the other artists, because it is just front to back bangers by really insanely talented people. And I'm just so lucky to have been a part of it. So yeah, I guess maybe to play us out here, I'm just going to play the full track. You can stick around and listen if you want. Otherwise, I want to thank you so much for watching. I want to thank you so much for being a part of this channel, part of this community, and kind of just a beacon of positivity in a time where it's really dark for so many people. So I can't speak for everybody. I'm just one person. But thank you all so much for doing your part to make my life just a little bit brighter. I hope I can do my part to do the same for you. So if you like what you hear, if you want to support the ACLU and good causes like them, check out our compilation, Selected Ambient Works 2021. By the time this video comes out, it'll have just dropped. I'll put links to everything in the description. And yeah, tell me what you think of it. And we're planning on doing another compilation at some point. Where we want to make this a semi-regular thing. So comment down below if you have suggestions for what genre we should do next. Minimal techno has been suggested. I want to do hardstyle. That's a joke. Please don't comment hardstyle. But yeah, we'd love to get your input on, some creative suggestions for what we could do next. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm Daniel. This is The Messy Desk, and I love you more than I love making music for good causes. I'll see you next week. Peace.